After a bleak several months, finally, this was the week that women have been waiting for. Yes, the guarantee of LGBT marriage rights was passed by the House of Representatives. Yes, the right to contraception was passed by the House of Representatives. Yes, women members of Congress were arrested in front of the Supreme Court in defense of abortion rights. But I'm talking about the brave stand of the daughters of Zelophehad in front of Moses and Eleazar the priest and 70 male elders, demanding women's right to inherit land. They came forward to make their appeal, and it turned out that God was on their side. Now, these are some of the only named women in the wilderness, and the only women besides Miriam whose voices we hear. It's a modest win, granted. If a woman has no brother or uncle or other male relative and her father dies and therefore his landholding would be lost to the family, then his daughters can inherit land. Now, at the time, this was revolutionary. It made a path for women to be economically self-sufficient. This is the first time we have a glimpse into a way for a woman to survive and even thrive, regardless of marital status or her ability to bear children. In other words, an unmarried, childless woman could have a life. It's quite the relevant image in a year when we're back to questioning whether women are more than reproductive vessels. So Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah changed history with their assertiveness and their advocacy. What I never realized in all my years of reading this parsha and this story, and this is one of my favorite stories, as you might imagine, until this year, what do people say? Until I was this many years old, or what is it? Until I was, I don't know. Today years old, right? Until I was today years old, yesterday years old, was that they were not the only 5 women to immediately benefit from women's right to inherit property. There was another woman who inherited land along with them, and her name was Serach. So let's back up. Immediately before Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah, turn off the phone, please, took their daring stand, God called Moses, no, not really, God told Moses to take a census with the twin goals of identifying Israel's fighting force and distributing the land that they're about to enter equitably among the tribes. All of the men 20 years of age and older of each tribe are counted. And in addition to all of the male heads of clans, 6 women are named. In the tribe of Menashe, the 5 daughters of Zelophehad. And in the tribe of Asher, Serach. Now, unlike any other person in the Parsha, Serach is introduced with the words Vishem bat Asher Serach. And the name of Asher's daughter was Serach. The commentators wonder, well, what is this doing? What is she doing here? And what is this introduction doing in the midst of a count of men of fighting age? Why this special introduction? Ramban says it means that she is inheriting her own land, and they're naming her in this way to point that out. Chizkuni agrees with that and adds that her name precedes the idea that she has a name precedes her name because her life was so full of good deeds. And Das Renim agrees. And Rashi says what the rest of them all take for granted, that her mention here, specific mention here, must be because of the extraordinary fact that she is still alive. Now hold on, you might say. Wasn't Asher a son of Jacob, along with Reuben and Judah and Gad and Issachar? Yes, Asher was a son of Jacob. And doesn't that mean that Asher was alive back in the book of Genesis, 3 Torah books ago? It does mean that. And didn't Asher come down to Egypt with Jacob back during the time when his brother Joseph, when Asher's brother Joseph was vizier of Egypt and Pharaoh's right-hand man? Yes, all of this is so. Serach is in fact listed as one of the 70 family members of Jacob who came down to Egypt long before the Israelites were enslaved. Now wait, weren't the Israelites enslaved for more than 400 years? Indeed, And the Torah tells us that Serach was still around when the Israelites crossed the sea to freedom. Even so, you might object, didn't the generation who went free from Egypt wander for 40 years and then all die in the wilderness? Yes. To wit, in this very parsha, Moses is instructed to appoint Joshua as the new leader because he is about to die, because no one from the slave generation will still be alive to enter the promised land, except for two people, Joshua and Caleb. Two people, except though the Torah doesn't say so in the same breath, also Serach. She is the only one of the wilderness generation still standing. And she was already many centuries old when these other people were born. Of all the children of Israel, Serach is the only one who, upon entering the land of Israel, is going home. Somehow she has survived for something like 470 years. And because of the activism of Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcha, and Tirzah, she will be inheriting her own plot of land in Israel, the place of her birth. Now, if you're still with me, it's hard to imagine that Serach and the daughters of Zelophehad didn't know each other. Because it has to be that at very least, after they did their daring advocacy, that Serach found her way to the sisters to say thank you. But it seems more likely that she knew them all along. In fact, I'd like to imagine that she was their mentor who helped them to prepare. Now think about it. They were the ideal test case, 5 of them. Father died, no male relatives. They were articulate and bold and capable of taking on the fearsome task of telling Moses that he was wrong. Just like Rosa Parks was chosen among many potential test cases who actually preceded her in refusing to get up from their seats, she was chosen to be the one to challenge the law of segregation. And just as she trained for years before refusing to give up that seat, I'm thinking that the daughter's speech was no spontaneous act, but instead that Serach was behind the scenes all along, lifting up the next generation of women leaders. And this comports with a larger theory that I have been brewing, that there was an underground network of women's resistance and mutual aid throughout the wilderness experience. This theory first came to me. I know some of you are not believing me, but listen. This theory first came to me with Parshat Naso, in one of the most sexist episodes of the Torah. When we encounter the Sota ritual, Canterbrighters heard me talk about this when we were there just recently. Yeah, but not in these ways. Not in these ways. I know, because I'm making this connection now I've never thought of, which is Serach being part of this whole network. Okay, I'm getting excited about this. So in the Sota ritual, do people know what that is? It's not a happy thing. Okay, I'm going to tell you about it. So in a Sota ritual, if a woman has been accused of adultery by her husband, but he has zero evidence that she's done that, that woman has to endure a public ritual intended to humiliate her, and in so doing, vent off or satiate the jealousy of her husband. Some commentators surmise that this ritual, which centers on a supposedly magical potion of bitter waters, was meant as a means of preventing violence against women. The idea being that it would address and perhaps, relieve the husband's rage. What occurred to me for the first time this year is that the words bitter waters, me marim, have the exact same spelling as the words Miriam's waters, me Miriam. Biblical Hebrew has no vowels. These two phrases are identical. We know that Miriam sustained the Israelites with her water from her magical wells, so it seems likely to me that in the Sota ritual, we have evidence of an underground network of resistance and mutual aid by and for women. A woman accused of adultery would seem to undergo a dangerous and humiliating ritual of bitter waters, while all the time, the water she was drinking was the sweet waters of Miriam's well. The men stood around exacting vengeance on their conspiracy theory, while the women exchanged knowing glances as they engaged in the pantomime. What else did this underground network provide? I'm now, with the presence of Serach and the daughters of Zelophehad in this episode, seeing further and extended evidence of all the things it might have done. And perhaps Serach was the wise woman elder figure behind it all. Now, one more important piece of the puzzle, and then we'll bring it all together, hopefully. Our Parsha this week is not named for a woman, though I do believe that more women are named in this Parsha than any other, because Moses' mother Yocheved and sister Miriam are also named besides the 6 that I've been focusing on. But the Parsha is named for a man named Pinchas. Now, Pinchas is a complicated figure. who's celebrated by God for stopping a mass orgiastic frenzy that was leading to a deadly plague. And he did so by impaling a couple with a spear while they were mid-coupling. He did so while Moses and Eleazar, his father, the high priest, stood by and did nothing. Aside from Pinchas's act, which I recognize is a significant thing to put aside, the start of this portion is a celebration of decisive action when the whole world has gone mad. When the whole world has gone mad and the people in charge aren't doing anything to stop it, and it's leading the whole society toward death, that is not the time to wait. That's what Torah is saying. That is not the time to look around and hope someone else will take care of it. That is not the time to doubt your own power or your role or whether you're the right person to act. That is the time to act. That is the time to see what you can do to make it better, to make it stop, to take the healing of your society into your own hands. Now, I hope you know me well enough to know that I'm not advocating violence or vigilantism. I am not. But I am suggesting that there are times that call upon us, no matter who we are, no matter where we stand, to stop business as usual, to stop blindly doing the work of the past, to stop being limited by the roles expected of us, and instead to risk everything and to take decisive action to change the course of history. That's what I think the Pinchas episode is getting at. So here we are in a burning world, in a society slouching toward autocracy, patriarchy, and decay. And the people in charge are not demonstrating an ability to meet this moment. In this parasha, we have 4 models for this time. If you buy my story about Serach, we have an underground network of mutual aid, mentorship, and resistance. We have advocates confronting power and changing laws. We have decisive action by ordinary citizens to change direction. And finally, we have in Serach also long-term survival, quietly, steadily, persistently making it through all the ups and downs, endings and beginnings, crises and resolutions to be part of making a future with the next generation. May we, in our time, advocate for new laws now. May we take decisive action from wherever we stand to change our direction now. May we support one another in mutual aid and mentorship and resistance now. And may we invest in the 500-year horizon, imagining, like Serach, building a future with the next generation. Can you hear that song?